Luto is a game that pulls you in with its creepy, familiar setting and keeps you around for just the right amount of emotional trauma. If you enjoy psychological horror games that make you feel as if you needed a degree in psychology before starting the game, stick around. This is a good one. I did want to give a quick content warning. This game is a psychological horror game that does delve into some pretty serious real-life topics. We will be talking about these and discussing these. It includes things such as self-harm, suicide, mental illness, and other struggles that we see in the day-to-day. And now that you have been warned, we will continue. In Luto, you find yourself playing as Samuel, or at least who we think is Samuel, or maybe a part of Samuel. This is where that degree in psychology may come in handy. Samuel finds himself trapped in his own house. While seemingly trying to escape from it over and over again, he finds himself realizing that maybe he is trapped in another one of his nightmares. As the game progresses, you find yourself thinking a little less that this might be a nightmare, and it could be something else that you're dealing with here. Eventually, you find yourself unable to open the front door and you head to the basement, as any person would in this kind of scenario. In the basement, you find that the cellar door is being banged on from below, and as any person would, you open the cellar door and head on down to see what's going on. This is where things start getting weird. A quick spoiler warning for those who do intend to play this game. I do have to talk about some things that occur in the game that will likely spoil events later on. I'm going to try to keep it to a minimum because I do want you to play this game, but be warned and proceed with caution. We wouldn't have a good psychological horror game without some puzzles to frustrate us along the way. The puzzles in this game are fascinating. They rely heavily on Samuel's sketchbook, which you find makes a lot of sense because this is psychological. It is about his own psyche. And he was a filmmaker and an artist, and he was a very artistic, expressive person before things had occurred in his life. So this whole time you are also trying to piece back together his sketchbook while learning a lot about these sketches themselves. You find yourself looking at panels specifically, you find yourself looking at chapter titles, things of that nature to solve these puzzles. Those are the hints I will give you. Go forth, solve these puzzles. The puzzles were very good in this game, they're very thoughtful, and they really did break down literally chapter to chapter of the progression in both Samuel's mind and his traumas. One of the very interesting parts about this game is although it does tend to kind of animate and portray certain traumas as horrors, and you will see this in some of the drawings, the really just kind of disheveled demon looking shadows that are in the drawings drawn on the walls in the basement, you know, things of that nature. It gives this very creepy, very scary aesthetic. And the shadows or demons in the drawings, I really lean to believe that it portrays the demon or the entity or even just the shadow that kind of overtakes each family member. It seems to affect each and every family member. It's in all the different sketchbook portraits of the family. It could also be the grandfather's curse being depicted here. But really, when you break it down...
Let me break it down for you, Mark.
It's very, let's think about how this would affect you as a person once you've understood what happened here. You can assume that Samuel, or the part of Samuel that you are playing as in his mind or in this nightmare, he has dealt with a lot of things, and he is trying to then get through these traumas and process things in a way that he understands. The kind of structural breakdown of this labyrinth of a house, like, this makes a lot of sense to be in the nightmares of an artist. Alright, now we have a spoiler warning. From here on, I will be talking more specific about what happens in this story and what makes me believe certain things about the outcome of this game. So please take all the information I have given you previously, go play the game for yourself, go watch a full gameplay video, do something of the matter before I just tell you about it, because I want you to experience learning it the first time, not from me. So the reason that you kind of question yourself as the player, or as this Samuel character, and why I mentioned that maybe I'm Samuel, maybe I'm not Samuel. The narrator actually specifically addresses you as, you're not really Samuel, are you? And so it's hard to grasp in the beginning. This is pretty early, he says that. And so you're immediately like, okay, who's Samuel? Because I thought I was Samuel.
I may not have a brain, gentlemen, but I have an idea.
Because you obviously, in the first chapter, it has to do with his brother. And so you go through the chapter with his brother, and you do the things that are related to his brother. Obviously, I'm Samuel in this sense. And then pretty much as soon as you get grounded in the fact that you are Samuel, you're trying to leave your house, you're stuck, the narrator hits you with, you're not really Samuel, are you? And then things get confusing, right? Then you start like, okay, then who am I? If I'm not Samuel, why am I dealing with Samuel's traumas if I'm not Samuel? My favorite piece of a narrative, the game starts in your bathroom looking at the mirror. But the mirror looks like it was shattered. Like somebody punched it, was hit with a hammer or something, right? So it's just broken in the middle, and you cannot see yourself. Take that with a grain of salt, but I think the theory is the whole time you are trying to get back to yourself and be able to see yourself and tell yourself everything's going to be okay. There's also a reoccurring image. This game likes to kind of present itself in widescreen, which is also very interesting. I think it's kind of a tactic for the filmmaker part of Samuel, is it's in widescreen. There are things that occur behind the widescreen. So, you know, you have about 70% of your screen here. And I'll give you a little visual. The rest here is used sometimes as like a background to what is occurring, which is very odd. You know, usually you don't have things in the empty space in your widescreen movies. And so this leads you to believe that there's someone behind the nightmare. Quite literally, there's someone behind these events that you are going through. As for these second, third, and so on chapters, it kind of jumbles up because, you know, it's repeating itself. You keep going back to day 1 or Monday. And this is when you're trying to leave for work. And then you go through the door and it says Tuesday. You go through the door, it says Wednesday. And so you're trapped in this loop. You're trapped in your nightmare. As the game progresses, you seem to get a little further, and more things seem to have permanently changed within this nightmare as you progress your puzzles. And as you progress your puzzles, the narrator becomes more aware that you are messing things up. Okay? The narrator seems pretty friendly. He's looking out for you. He says, hey, watch out for him. Watch out for this other guy. That's when you start thinking, like, okay, it's not necessarily a nightmare. This may be my own psyche. I may be stuck in my own head right now. It has this both psychological and spiritual aspect to it, but it also has this very digital aspect to it towards the end, which gets very interesting. And that seems to be how he may be coping with these things, or how he's trying to rationalize, because he understands film. He understands digital filmmaking, he understands art, and so that's how he is trying to understand what's going on and trying to compartmentalize it in a way that's familiar so that he's not going to have a breakdown. You find a script in your house, and the script tells you verbatim what you just did in the last event. You have these 4 lights you are attempting to light, right? You're trying to bring back the light in these dark figures. The figures are people-shaped, you know, humanoid. And so the idea is that you are trying to bring back the light to Samuel, who also seems to be yourself. You stopped your filmmaking, you stopped your art, you stopped being creative because of all of these events that happened. Samuel's brother Isaac is the main part of the first chapter. You find out that Isaac has been sick. You find out that Isaac may no longer be with us. And you find out that his parents, I guess, were lying to Samuel about the severity. He said he had the flu, he has a cold, it's not that bad, you know, things of that nature. And then eventually Isaac is no longer with us. So Samuel has a whole lot of resentment towards both his family and, of course, Isaac for leaving, and himself for not seeing it, and he ends up blaming himself for not being aware enough, and because he wasn't aware enough, he couldn't save his brother. Trauma number 1. The second trauma is Samuel's father. This is Joel. Joel is when you found the dull heart when you were searching for each family member's artifact. Joel, I suppose, did quite literally have a dull heart. The imagery seems to suggest that he died of a heart attack. This could have been from health reasons, could have been from emotional stresses, things of that nature, like Isaac passing away, and the death of the grandfather that we'll get into for the third trauma. But Joel died of a heart attack, and so the imagery that they use is this spider and this webbing and everything covering Joel's heart. And so whatever it was that restricted his heart or the blood flow or stressed him out, you know, it finally tied him up and took his life. Trauma 1, Isaac has died of cancer. Trauma 2 is the trauma of his father dying from a heart attack. The third, I don't know about the mother. The mother is the only kind of one up in the air because there's 4 lights, right? Samuel seems to be one of them. There is 4 family members. I think the mother is still alive. All throughout the game, you find little notes and little, you know, memoirs and things of that nature that the mother has left around. She references, "Oh, I noticed that you don't have your painting up anymore. I'll keep it if you don't want it. Just let me know, and I can always give it back to you." Or, "I noticed that you were going to throw away some of the scripts. Like, oh, please let me know. I'll keep those." She seems, as far as I can tell, very proud of what he's done and very proud of his artistic ability. And you know, as a mother would, wants to keep these things. Like, "Oh, no, like, don't get rid of them. Those are precious to me. Please don't throw them away. I'll keep them until you want them again." So she's kind of instilled this like hope of knowing. It's like, "No, I know you're gonna want those again. Let me hold on to them for you." And so I think that her persistence in this may be the only reason that Samuel's still alive at this point, genuinely. The third light, or the third trauma that you're trying to process, is your grandfather. The grandfather, you first hear about when you find a note from your grandmother in the game next to her chest, the moon chest. And the note says something along the lines of, "I pray that my husband's curse will not pass to my family." You do find out that the grandfather had passed away, and then through that third kind of sequence of events, you find a game of hangman. And there are ghosts all over the place, and you use the word romper to solve the hangman puzzle. In Spanish, romper means break. It's to break. So you can think of the breaking of a rope, the breaking of a heart, the breaking of a spirit. The grandfather passed away, and he took his own life. So that curse, obviously, in a religious sense, it makes a lot of sense that they would reference this as a curse. The grandmother prays that the curse wouldn't pass along, because mental illness, depression, those things are often seen as spirits lurking or an evil voice, you know, speaking to you, telling you to do things. And it's not so much seen as mental illness with a religious background. A generational curse, if you will, for those who grew up in the church. So now I will give you the number 1 spoiler warning for the game, because this is going to be very important to you if you have not played the game. I'm very serious here. Any horror setting, any movie that involves a dog, what's the number 1 thing you want to know before going into that? Does the dog live? Thankfully, the dog is never physically in this game. However, you do get to read a lot of notes. And there are pictures on the wall of this Chihuahua. His name is Mr. Buttons. Mr. Buttons was picked up by Samuel and adopted as what he said was a way to cope and to fill the void of his brother. But then the dog became much more than that and fill a void that he didn't know he had. It was a separate void. So after processing each, you have the void of his brother, you have the void of Samuel's grandfather, you have the void of Samuel's father, and now you have the void of his dog. Dogs don't live forever. I don't think anything tragic happened to the dog other than the death itself. It wasn't, you know, some awful inhumane happening, but his dog is also gone. And so in the narrative, after each chapter, Samuel talks and he says, the first time was hard. The second time was hard. The third time was the hardest, basically, you know, in this chronological order. Because at the very end of the game, you get to see Samuel. He's been the face behind the video. He's been the face behind the game. And Samuel being very, very lost in his own mind. And the mirror being broken is an image that he could not see himself in the mirror anymore. Albeit literally, albeit physically, he couldn't sit there in the mirror and look at himself and tell himself it's okay, right? So you go through this entire string of events to get to the bottom of this house, the bottom of the basement, in the cellar, through the depths and the catacombs and the trenches and whatever you're climbing through, as you keep falling deeper and deeper and deeper into your own psyche, you finally find yourself at the bottom. Once you have rationalized and gone through the traumas of each other family member, you find yourself and you talk to yourself and you tell yourself it's okay. You tell yourself you didn't kill Isaac. You didn't kill Joel. You didn't kill Mr. Buttons. There's this quote that was phenomenal. I love this quote so much from this game. A person having dreams gives them power. And when those dreams are broken, the power doesn't fade away, it simply changes hands. And so that power that had been moving Samuel and that creativity and that power is given him to push forward and make something, right? And to create. It had changed hands into this other darker voice in his head that was telling him that it was his fault, that he wasn't enough, and that he should end it. And that is where we find ourselves at the end of the game, is that the power had shifted and Samuel was at the brink. He was at the absolute edge. And he was about to lose. But something inside of him, be that other Samuel, or not really Samuel, pushed through, processed his trauma, finally talked to himself in the mirror and said, it's going to be okay, this isn't your fault, you didn't kill them, you have to live.